Humankind locked in a deadly struggle for survival.
Heavily armed spaceships versus big insects. Not much of a fair fight.
Don't let it touch you!
Open fire! Solway! Fire!
Wirrn, this is the way it used to be.
Hi everyone, TardisGuy123 here, and today I'm going to be reviewing another 8th Doctor adventure, this time we're looking at Wirrn and Dawn. So this is another one from Series 3, and it of course features Paul McGann and Sheridan Smith. And it's written by Nicholas Briggs, who is quite a prolific writer when it comes to Big Finish. And here you've of course got classic Doctors, brand new adventures, full cast audio drama, the 8th Doctor and Lucie there. Quite a nice cover, how they're blended into the background there. And then you also have a soldier there and a Wirrn behind it. And, well, the silhouette of a Wirrn is very different. And you've also got a rocky landscape. So quite a nice cover. The 8th Doctor logo bit there, or at least a Big Finish version. And featuring Colin Salmon and Daniel Anthony. And of course Big Finish down there. The Order of Adventures of Doctor Who against a red background this time. And then on the side you have Doctor Who Wirrn and Dawn written in red, and 3.4 Big Finish Productions. And on the back we have the TARDIS right there in red, and the blurb, and of course the cast. That's your back. Then in the middle we have, similar to the Hot House, of course parts 1 and 2 on the same disc. There's only one disc in this, and then back here we have the same thing there, except 2 stories added on, and they are of course Hot House and the Beast of Orlok. Get this back in, and then take the booklet out. Take this out. Here we go. Wirrn and Dawn written on the front there, of course all the cover I showed you before. And here we have the insides with writer's notes and director's notes, both by Nicholas Briggs, because he's both written and directed this of course. And here is quite a nice little bit inside. It doesn't relate much to the actual story. Lucie never really does anything like that, as you can see pictured there. It's more just kind of like a movie poster version of it, and you can tell it's kind of like got the black bars here to make it look more movie-esque, like the same aspect ratio that you see in movies. And you've also got Galsec written down there, which is a nice link back to the Sontaran experiment. And you've got the Wirrn here, and they look much more menacing than they did in the Ark in Space. And I love the Ark in Space, but one of the things that was its limitation, it's not necessarily bad because they couldn't really do much with it at the time, but they didn't look the best. However, here they've kind of improved on that, but still very much made them look like Wirrn. And you've got the Doctor right back there. And finally, of course, we have Doctor Who magazine cast notes and the next story, which is the Scapegoat. So then, what did I think of Wirrn and Dawn? Now, it's another sequel like Hot House. That's part of the reason why I picked these two up, because they were 4th Doctor sequels, and I love the original stories. Seed of Doom and the Ark in Space. Those are 2 very strong stories in my opinion. So how much these sequels hold up to them. And of course, they are a lot shorter, with only 2 parts each, as opposed to 6 or 4 parts of their original counterparts. So, and I think one of the strengths this one has over Hot House is that it doesn't try too hard to emulate the feel of its predecessor. It very much feels different from the Ark in Space. It still features references to it and whatnot, and of course features the Wirrn, but it takes them in new directions. It tells a very different type of story, whereas it feels like Hot House is telling the same type of story in a different setting. So this, it's not based on Prestige, it's all out action. Right from the start it kicks off, you've just got loads of action thrown at you right from the very beginning, but also some mystery. And it's during the second half when it slows down, it kind of like reverses what you'd expect. Usually expect kind of like a slow build up in the first half, then all of the action in the second, but here it flips that on its head and has the slow stuff in the second half. Now, while it's good to have that formula twisted a bit, I feel it kind of leaves part 2 a bit dull in comparison to the first half, because it's much slower and so much more focused on the mystery. And to be honest, because the first half was so good, you kind of want to get back to that action-adventure feel, but still have a good amount of plot. And that's one of the flaws of the first half. It's very much throwing loads of action at you without really much plot, but there is those little moments where you get time to process what's going on, and you know, that's wonderful, because too often in New Who, and some Big Finish stories as well, which are these short-length ones, they're trying to throw everything at you at once, and they don't give you a moment to pause and kind of like take it all in. But this one does that, and this one very much shows that idea of the horror of war, and that neither side is really winning. You very much get this idea that both the Wirrn and the humans are getting completely massacred. And there's also some kind of like analogues to racism in here, kind of like racial prejudices with the Gausek and the Indigs, which is indigenous. And, you know, it's very powerful stuff, and while it is kind of like glossed over a little bit, it is still some nice stuff to have in there too. So, what about the Doctor and Lucie in this? They are very good together, and there is a wonderful bit when they're in their spacesuits, and it's just wonderful character moments, and it's very funny, despite it being this heat of this battle and whatnot. But it is some very strong stuff, I feel, and superbly acted by Paul McGann and Sheridan Smith. And then they get separated in the second half, and what I like about Lucie Miller is that she can be scared and brave at the same time. It's something that not many classic companions can do. Well, not many companions can do, sorry. You know, new series companions, they tend to be brave, but not scared as well, which is a bit of a flaw because it makes them a bit unrealistic. But here, Lucie Miller scared and brave at the same time, a bit like Sarah Jane Smith could do. In fact, I believe that's the reason Barry lets cast Elizabeth Sladen, as Sarah Jane Smith, because she could do both scared and brave at the same time, and Sheridan Smith could do that too, and she does it wonderfully as Lucie. Especially in the second half, you get a lot of that, where she's left without the Doctor for a while, and some very good stuff on her part. And then the Doctor's half of the story, it's very much focusing on the mystery, and while ultimately it's a bit odd, because the Wirrn are actually quite similar to the Krynoids when you get down to thinking about it, because they both kind of like infect humans either with seeds or just general spores or whatever, and you know, those then start to eat the human alive and eventually become either a Wirrn or a Krynoid. So it's a bit interesting that they're both together like that, and they both are quite similar monsters, but the end result obviously is very different. The Wirrn are very different monsters to the Krynoids, but it's the same basic idea when you look at it from that perspective. And I think this very much looks on the idea of, do they have the right? And it's a very moral dilemma at the end. And what's good about it is that there's not a cop-out. It is a very strong moral dilemma that actually there has to be a choice, and the choice is made, and there's no cop-out, which is something that happened a lot in RTD's run. So that's some very good stuff, and quite sad stuff as well, but nevertheless some very strong stuff. However, overall, the story does have its flaws. The second half is a little bit disappointing when compared to the first, and the first half is maybe a little bit too fast compared to the second. I feel there should have been a bit more of a balance there somehow. While it's nice to get that formula thrown on its head, as I've said before, I still feel that could have been handled maybe a little bit better by Nicholas Briggs. And of course, he does love his romps, and he does a romp very well in this, but he does inject a bit of humanity into it for the second half. But I feel the two halves are too distinct, and that's a bit jarring, especially if you listen to it all in one go, which you can do because it's only 2 half-hour episodes, so it's not too much, it doesn't take too much out of you. So I think now I'll get on to rating this story after rambling on about it. Now, it's going to be a 7.5 from me. While I do prefer that this takes it in a different direction as opposed to Hot House, which very much takes it in the same direction as the Seeds of Doom did, I still ultimately prefer Hot House, to be honest. It's a much more enjoyable story, However, this one is very strong too, although just not quite as strong, and there are quite a few better stories. So overall, that is my thoughts on Wirrn and Dawn. I hope you've enjoyed this 8th Doctor review, and I hope you'll join me for another review very soon. So until then, bye everyone.